Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The SS Wanderlust wasn't the biggest diplomatic vessel in the fleet, but it was certainly the loudest. And that had everything to do with its captain. Captain Aldous stood at precisely 6 feet, 8 inches of scaled, muscular authority. A Valtorian through and through, he carried himself with the kind of military precision that made junior officers straighten their spines from 3 corridors away. His voice, could rattle hull plating when he was in a mood. Which, to be fair, was most of the time. The ship hummed through the outer fringe territories on what should have been a routine diplomatic mission. Routine being a relative term when you're trying to negotiate a treaty with a species that had only joined the Galactic Council 8 months prior, and still thought negotiation meant establish dominance, then maybe talk. The Molthari, feline-like, bipedal, apex predators who'd evolved from ambush hunters on a planet where everything had either very big teeth or very potent venom. Sometimes both. They were the kind of species that made other species nervous in elevators. "Status report," Aldous barked, his voice echoing off the bridge's metallic surfaces like thunder in a canyon. "Molthari Delegation shuttle has docked, sir," replied the navigation officer, a Delphian whose tentacles twitched slightly at the volume. "They're proceeding to the main conference hall now." Aldous nodded sharply. "Excellent. Full formal protocol. I want this by the book." By the book. Right. Because that always worked so well with species who'd barely figured out that other civilizations didn't appreciate being pounced on as a greeting. Near the back of the bridge, nursing what had to be her 5th cup of coffee that morning, sat Diana. Human. Early 30s. The ship's cultural liaison. Though most of the crew assumed she'd gotten the job through some bureaucratic lottery rather than actual qualifications, she had that look about her, relaxed posture, slightly rumpled uniform, an expression that suggested she was perpetually 3 seconds away from cracking a joke. The crew had a running bet about how long it would take before Aldous fired her for insufficient military bearing. Currently, the over-under was at 6 weeks. They were on week 11. "Diana," Aldous said, not quite snapping but close. "You've reviewed the briefing materials?" She glanced up from her datapad, where she was absolutely not reviewing briefing materials and was instead reading an article about Earth cats doing stupid things. Molthari. Clan-based society. Highly territorial. Value strength and directness. Got it. Aldous' scaled brow ridge twitched. That was his tell, the thing he did when he wanted to say something cutting, but protocol prevented it. This is a crucial negotiation. Trade routes, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. I need everyone at their best. "I'm always at my best, Captain," Diana said, with a smile that was just friendly, enough to not be insubordinate. "It's just that my best looks really relaxed." Someone on the bridge, probably the Delphian, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Aldous chose to ignore it. "Conference hall, 10 minutes. Full dress uniform." "You got it, boss." The captain swept off the bridge, his heavy footfalls making the deck plates ring. The moment he was gone, Diana drained her coffee and muttered, "This is going to be a disaster." The Delphian's tentacles stopped twitching. "You think so?" "Oh, absolutely." She stood, stretching. "Molthari don't do formal well. They're going to read all his booming and posturing as aggression. And if Aldous does his usual, 'I am the mighty captain' routine—" She made an exploding gesture with her hands. "Boom! Diplomatic incident." "Then why not say something?" Diana shrugged. Would he listen? The Delphian's tentacles drooped in what might have been the aquatic equivalent of a sigh. Point taken. Besides, Diana said, heading for the exit, sometimes you've got to let people fail small so they don't fail big. I'll be there to catch the pieces. 10 minutes later, the conference hall was a testament to Valtorian efficiency. Perfectly arranged chairs, optimal lighting, a long table with refreshments that had been carefully selected from the Molthari dietary database, all high-protein, all properly prepared. Aldous stood at the head of the table, flanked by his senior officers. Everyone in full dress uniform, standing at attention like they were about to negotiate a surrender rather than a trade agreement. Diana stood slightly off to the side because apparently cultural liaison meant present, but not actually part of the important people group. She'd changed into her dress uniform, though she'd deliberately left the top button undone. Small rebellions. The doors hissed open. The Molthari delegation entered, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop about 5 degrees. 3 adults, tall, lithe, covered in short fur that ranged from golden brown to deep auburn. Their eyes were large and forward-facing, pupils contracting to slits in the conference hall's lighting. They moved with that particular grace that apex predators have, the kind that makes prey species instinctively check for exits. Ambassador Hesselen led the group, older, his muzzle graying, but still moving with coiled strength. He wore ceremonial wraps in deep blue, and at his hip hung something that was either decorative or a very functional blade. Possibly both. But it was what followed the adults that made Diana's eyebrows shoot up. 3 juveniles. Cubs. The Molthari equivalent of pre-teens, maybe 10 to 13 in human years. They moved with less grace than the adults, all gangly limbs and not quite grown into their size awkwardness. Their fur was fluffier, their ears proportionally larger. One was bold, walking with his chin up, golden eyes scanning everything with intense curiosity. That would be Olin, if Diana's guess was right, heir to the Sunrunner clan. Another was smaller, more cautious, staying close to Ambassador Hesse Allen's side. Her fur was darker, almost russet. Shiva, probably. The youngest. The third was somewhere in between. Watchful, alert, his tail twitching slightly as he took in the room. Win. Diana's mind raced. Cubs. They'd brought cubs to a diplomatic negotiation. That was significant. In Molthari culture, that meant something specific, something important, something that absolutely was not in the executive summary that Aldous had read. The captain, to his credit, recovered quickly from his surprise. He drew himself up to his full height and, "Welcome, Ambassador Hesse Allen and honored delegation!" His voice boomed across the conference hall like a thunderclap in an echo chamber. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. All 3 cubs dropped into defensive crouches, ears pinned back, lips curling to show very sharp, very white teeth. A low, rumbling growl filled the air, not from one throat, but 3. The adults tensed, hands moving toward their hips, toward those maybe decorative, maybe functional blades. Aldous, bless his military heart, didn't understand what was happening. I said, "Welcome to the—" Shiva, the smallest cub, lunged forward with a hiss that could have stripped paint. Security officers moved. The Molthari adults shifted stance. Ambassador Hesse Allen's hand closed around his blade's hilt. And that's when Diana did something that nobody expected. She stepped directly between the lunging cub and the security officers, moving with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she did this sort of thing every day before breakfast. "They don't like yelling," she said quietly. The simplicity of the statement cut through the chaos like a knife through fog. Everyone froze. The cubs stopped mid-lunge, confused. The security officers held position but didn't advance. Even Aldous, mighty Captain Aldous, with his decades of military service, just stopped. "Liaison Diana, what are you—" he started. She held up one hand, not aggressively, just a simple gesture, and to everyone's shock, she ignored him, ignored the captain. Nobody ignored Captain Aldous. Instead, she crouched down, making herself smaller, less threatening. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She didn't make direct eye contact with the cubs. That would be a challenge. Instead, she angled her head slightly, exposing her neck. Submission. Non-threat. "I'm not hunting you, and I'm not prey trying to run." Then she did something even stranger. She made a sound, low, rhythmic, not quite a purr, but something similar. A soft, repetitive hum that vibrated in her chest. The cub's ears twitched. Shiva stopped growling. Olan's tail, which had been lashing like a whip, slowed. "Easy," Diana murmured, still in that same quiet tone. "You're okay. New place, lots of noise, I get it. But you're okay." "Liaison," Aldous tried again. "Captain," she said, not looking at him, "I need you to lower your voice by about 60%. Right now." The tone wasn't insubordinate. It was calm, matter of fact, the way you'd tell someone their shoe was untied. But the effect was like she'd slapped him. "I will not—" "Sir." This time she did glance back, and her expression was serious. "These are apex ambush predators. Their biology is wired to respond to sudden loud noises as either threats to fight or threats to flee from. Your voice, which is very impressive, don't get me wrong, is triggering their fight-or-flight response. If you want this negotiation to not end with someone bleeding on your nice clean floor, you need to be quieter." Ambassador Hesse Allen, who'd been watching this entire exchange with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey, made a sound. Not a growl. Something else. Something that might have been approval? "The human understands," he said, his voice a low rumble that carried none of Aldous's boom. Curious. Aldous looked like he'd been hit with a stun rod. His protocols, his carefully planned formal greeting, his by-the-book approach, all of it had not just failed, but had nearly caused an interstellar incident. And this human, this coffee-drinking, joke-cracking cultural liaison he'd been considering replacing, had fixed it in about 15 seconds. He actually seemed at a loss for words. Then, to his credit, he lowered his voice. "I apologize. I was not aware." Diana gave him a quick smile, encouraging, not mocking, then turned back to the cubs. Shiva had crept closer, nose twitching, clearly trying to figure out what this strange, soft creature was. "Hey there," Diana said softly. "I'm Diana. I know everything's really weird right now. New smells, new sounds, lots of people you don't know. But I promise, nobody here wants to hurt you. Okay?" Shiva tilted her head, pupils dilating slightly. Processing. Olin, the bold one, spoke. His voice cracked slightly. Puberty, probably. "You speak strange. Soft. Why soft?" "Because," Diana said gently, "I'm not trying to challenge you or scare you. I'm just trying to talk. On my world, we save the loud voices for when we're actually in danger. Right now, there's no danger. So, soft voices." Wynn, the middle cub, had been watching silently. Now he spoke, his tone suspicious. "You are prey species. Small. Weak. Why no fear?" Diana's smile widened slightly. "Oh, I'm definitely smaller than you guys. But weak? Nah, different kind of strong. And I'm not scared because you're kids. Sure, you could absolutely wreck me in a fight. But so could a moose. And I'm not scared of moose. Respectful? Absolutely. But scared? Nope. What is moose? Shiva asked. Big animal. Has antlers, like weapons on its head. Can kick hard enough to cave in a car. We mostly just leave them alone and everybody's happy. The cubs seemed to consider this. The concept of not fighting something dangerous, but also not fearing it, appeared to be new to them. Ambassador Hess Allen stepped forward, his movements careful. You have read the full cultural documents. It wasn't a question. Diana straightened up, slowly, still maintaining that non-threatening posture. All 8,000 pages. Well, 8,063, if we're counting appendices. Something that might have been surprise crossed the ambassador's feline features. Most species skim the summary. Most species miss important details that way, Diana replied. Like the fact that bringing one's offspring to negotiations is the highest show of trust in Multhari culture. You're literally putting your genetic legacy in the other party's hands. It's not bringing kids to work. It's, I trust you enough to put my cubs in your presence. The silence that followed was deafening. Aldous made a sound like he'd been gut-punched, because, of course, that detail hadn't been in the executive summary. That detail had been buried in Section 4, subsection 12, paragraph 8 of the cultural database. The database that apparently only Diana had actually read in full. Oh, Aldous said quietly. Then, even more quietly, oh no. Yeah, Diana murmured. Then, louder, to the ambassador, we are deeply honored by your trust, and I think, if it's okay with you, we should maybe move this meeting to somewhere quieter. Dimmer lighting, more comfortable. Let everyone settle in before we start talking business. Hess Allen's ears, which had been angled back defensively, slowly moved forward. You are wise for one so young. I just pay attention, Diana said. Also, I'm thinking food before formal talks. Diplomacy's easier when everyone's fed and calm. Olin made a chittering sound that might have been laughter. I like this soft speaker. She makes sense. And just like that, the tension broke. Not completely. Years of instinct didn't vanish in minutes. But enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to try again. Aldous looked at Diana, and for the first time since she'd joined his crew, there was something other than mild frustration in his eyes, something that might have been respect. Liaison Diana, he said carefully, quietly, perhaps you should take the lead on the initial arrangements. She nodded. Happy to, Captain. Ambassador, if you and your family would follow me. I had the crew set up the observation lounge, lots of windows, view of the stars, adjustable lighting, more casual, better for everyone. As they began to move toward the exit, Shiva fell into step beside Diana, still watching her with those huge, curious eyes. You really not scared? The young cub asked. Diana looked down at her and smiled. Nope. You know why? Why? Because being scared doesn't help anything. Being respectful, being aware, being careful. That helps. Fear just makes you stupid. And I try really hard not to be stupid. Shiva's whiskers twitched. Soft speaker is strange, but maybe good strange. I'll take it, Diana said. Behind them, Aldous watched them go, then looked at his senior officers, all of whom were very carefully not making eye contact with him. I believe, he said slowly, that I owe someone an apology, and possibly a promotion. The Delphian's tentacles twitched, in what definitely was a suppressed laugh this time. The observation lounge was a different world entirely. Diana had worked with the ship's environmental systems on the way over. dimming the lights to about 40% of standard. The massive viewport showed the slow wheel of stars outside, providing just enough ambient light to see by without the harsh overhead glare. She'd also had the crew rearrange the furniture. Instead of formal seating around a conference table, there were now comfortable lounging platforms arranged in a loose circle. And, most importantly, she'd raided the galley. "Food first," she'd told the bemused chef, Aurelian, who'd spent the last 3 hours preparing formal canapés according to protocol. "No, not those. I need things with strong smells, proteins, different textures. Make it feel like a feast, not a business meeting." Now the low tables were covered with platters. Grilled meats, real meat, not synthesized, still steaming. Roasted vegetables with herbs. Fruits with bright colors. And because Diana had a hunch, several racks of what humans called barbecue ribs, absolutely drowning in sauce. The Multhari delegation entered, and all 3 cubs froze, noses working overtime. "Whoa," Wynne breathed. "Is this all for us?" Olin asked, his earlier suspicion replaced by barely contained excitement. "For everyone," Diana said, gesturing to the spread. "Help yourselves. No formality, no protocol. Just eat, relax, and we can talk when everyone's comfortable." Ambassador Hassalan studied her for a long moment, then made a gesture to the other adults. They moved to the platforms and, with considerably more grace than the cubs, began selecting food. The cubs needed no further encouragement. They descended on the tables like a small, furry hurricane. Shiva grabbed something that looked like roasted bird, sniffed it thoroughly, then took a cautious bite. Her eyes widened. Oh, this is good." Olan went straight for the ribs. He picked one up, sauce dripping, examined it with the intensity of a scientist discovering a new element, then bit down. Sauce smeared across his muzzle. He made a sound that was probably the Multhari equivalent of a moan of pure joy. "What is this?" he demanded around a mouthful of meat. "What magic is this?" "Barbecue," Diana said, grinning. "Earth food. We take meat, cook it low and slow, and cover it in sauce made from, honestly, a bunch of things. Tomatoes, spices, sugar, vinegar. Every region makes it different." Wynne had been more measured in his approach, but now he tried a rib too. His tail started swishing in what Diana was pretty sure was happiness. Aldous had entered quietly, along with a few of his officers. He stood off to the side, watching this scene with the expression of someone whose entire worldview was being systematically deconstructed and rebuilt. When he tried to move toward the formal seating area, Diana caught his eye and shook her head minutely, then pointed to one of the lounging platforms. To his credit, he adapted, sat down, even accepted a plate of food when it was offered. Ambassador Hassalan settled near Diana, his own plate balanced on his lap. "You understand us," he said quietly. "More than protocol demands." "I try," Diana replied, keeping her voice low. "Food is universal. Everybody's easier to talk to when they're not hungry. And cubs, they're always easier to work with when they're not overwhelmed." 6 species have attempted negotiations with us, Hassalan continued. 6 times we brought the young ones. 6 times the other species saw it as an insult, or a game, or a distraction. His ears flattened slightly. They did not understand the honor we offered. "Their loss," Diana said simply. "The way I see it, you just told us you trust us with the most important things in your world. That's not something to dismiss." Shiva had finished her first helping and was now cautiously approaching Diana's platform. "Soft speaker?" "You can call me Diana," she said with a smile. "Diana, can I ask a question?" "Absolutely. Why you not eat?" Diana glanced at her empty hands and laughed. You know what? Good point. She reached for the nearest platter and grabbed a rib, took a bite, made an exaggerated sound of satisfaction. See? Eating. This seemed to please Shiva enormously. She settled down near Diana's feet, close, but not touching. A comfortable distance. You have young? The cub asked. Me? No, but I have nieces and nephews, little ones. They're about your age, actually. They hunt? Not really. Humans are pretty useless when we're young. Can't walk for about a year after we're born. Can't really do much except cry and eat and make everyone around us exhausted. All three cubs had stopped eating and were staring at her. A year? Olan said, horrified. How you survive? Family, Diana said. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings. Everyone protects the little ones until they can protect themselves. It takes a long time, like 16 or 18 years before we're really independent. But that's how humans work. We're not built for solo survival. We're built for groups. Wynn cocked his head. This is why you understand cubs. You have weak young, too. I wouldn't say weak, Deanna corrected gently. Just vulnerable. And yeah, that's probably part of it. When you grow up in a species where the young need a lot of protection, you learn to read when someone's scared or overwhelmed or needs space. It's survival skill. Ambassador Hesse Allen had been listening to this exchange with keen interest. Now he spoke, his voice carrying across the lounge. Captain Aldous. The Valtorian straightened. Yes, Ambassador? Your cultural liaison. She is uncommon among your crew, yes? Aldous glanced at Diana, and something complicated crossed his face. She is. Unique. Yes. Good, Hessalan rumbled. Unique is what this requires. Standard thinking brings standard failure. Olan had demolished 3 ribs and was now licking sauce off his fingers with single-minded determination. Between licks, he said, Soft speak. Diana. On your world. You have predators? Oh, yeah, Diana said. Big ones. Bears that can weigh half a ton. Cats. Big cats. Not like you guys, but still dangerous. That can take down prey twice their size. Wolves that hunt in packs. Snakes with venom that can drop you in minutes. We've got sharks in the oceans, crocodiles in the rivers. Even some of our spiders are dangerous. The cubs looked thrilled and terrified in equal measure. And humans survive this? Shiva asked. Not just survive, Diana said. We thrived. Want to know the secret? 3 sets of large eyes fixed on her. We learned when to fight, when to run, and when to just coexist. We're not the strongest, we're not the fastest, but we're really, really good at figuring out how not to get eaten. And once you master that, she smiled, everything else is easier. Aldous, watching this exchange, finally seemed to understand what he'd been missing. Not just in the briefing documents, but in the entire approach to this negotiation. It wasn't about strength or protocol or military precision. It was about understanding, connection, meeting people, beings, where they were, not where you expected them to be. He caught Diana's eye and nodded slowly. An acknowledgement, an apology, a thank you, all rolled into one gesture. She nodded back. Message received. The feast continued, and slowly, the walls came down. An hour into the feast, something remarkable happened. The adults started talking business, and nobody stopped them. There were no formal announcements, no shifting into negotiation mode. Ambassador Hesse Allen simply looked at Aldous and said, Your trade routes through the Hennish sector. We would like access. Aldous, who had finally figured out that matching his volume to the room's energy was the smart play, nodded. We can arrange that. In exchange, we'd want navigation data for the approaches to your home system. Our merchant vessels have been having difficulties with the stellar drift in that region. Acceptable, Hess Allen said. One of the other Molthari adults pulled out a datapad and started making notes. Just like that. No posturing, no power plays. Just two parties recognizing mutual benefit and moving forward. Diana sat back and watched, a small smile playing at her lips. This was how it was supposed to work. When everyone felt safe, when the defensive walls came down, actual progress could happen. Shiva had curled up near Diana's platform, drowsy from food and the warm ambient temperature. Her eyes were half closed, but her ears still tracked every sound in the EHB room. Even relaxed, a predator stayed alert. Olan had moved closer too, though he was still actively eating, his fourth helping by Diana's count. The kid could put away food like nobody's business. "Diana?" he said between bites. "Yeah?" "The ribs. This is common food on Earth?" "Pretty common in some regions, yeah. Different places make it different ways. Some people argue about it a lot, actually. Like really intense arguments about whose style is best." Olan's ears perked up. Humans fight over food preparation? Not actual fights, Diana clarified. More like passionate discussions. Food is cultural, you know? It's about where you're from, who taught you to cook, memories of family gatherings. So when someone says their way is better, they're kind of saying their home is better. Gets emotional. Wynne, who had been quietly listening while working his way through a pile of roasted vegetables, spoke up. Humans are strange. Weak, young, long-growing time, fight about food but not with claws. How you become spacefaring? It was a fair question, honestly. Persistence, Diana said. We just don't give up. There's this thing we used to do, well, some humans still do it, called persistence hunting. You pick an animal, something fast like a deer, and you just chase it. Not sprint, just a steady run. The deer runs away, hides, rests. You track it and start chasing again, over and over. Eventually the animal is so exhausted it just collapses, and you win. The three cubs stared at her. That is horrifying, Shiva whispered. Little bit, yeah, Diana agreed cheerfully. But that's humans. We're not built to win the first fight. We're built to show up for the second, third, and 100th fight until we get what we need. It's how we survived ice ages, droughts, predators, diseases, each other. We just keep going. Ambassador Hesse Allen had paused in his negotiations with Aldous. He was listening now, his attention fully on Diana. Your species hunted prey to exhaustion, not with speed or strength, but with refusal to stop. Basically, yeah. We sweated, still do, which lets us cool down while running. Most animals can't do that. They overheat. We just keep going while they have to stop. It's not fair, not sporting, but it works. This explains much, one of the other Molthari adults said quietly. She had been silent until now, but her eyes gleamed with understanding. Humans in the Galactic Council. You arrived with less advanced technology than most species. Weaker bodies, shorter lifespans, yet you secured favorable treaties, trade agreements, representation beyond your population. We wondered how. Diana shrugged. We showed up. We kept showing up. We learned the languages, studied the cultures, made friends where we could, and worked around obstacles where we couldn't. Persistence. Olin made that chittering sound again. Definitely laughter. You are the prey species that hunts by being annoying. Hey now, Diana protested, but she was grinning. I prefer to think of it as dedicated. Same thing, Wynne said, and now he was making the sound too. Even Shiva, drowsy as she was, managed a soft chirp of amusement. Aldous watched this scene with something like wonder. His cultural liaison, the one he'd thought was too casual, too undisciplined, too lacking in proper military bearing, had somehow turned a potential disaster into not just a successful negotiation, but something warmer, something that looked almost like friendship. The Molthari weren't just agreeing to treaties. They were relaxed, laughing, sharing stories. Their cubs were safe and happy. This was trust being built in real time, and it was happening because someone had bothered to read the full cultural database and understand what actually mattered. "Ambassador," Aldous said, his voice careful, "I want to apologize again for my initial approach. I should have been better prepared." Hess Allen waved a paw dismissively. "You adapted. That matters more than perfect initial execution. Many species cannot adapt. They meet our customs with rigidity and wonder why we walk away." He glanced at Diana. "You have something rare in your crew, Captain. Someone who sees clearly." "I'm beginning to understand that," Aldous said quietly. The negotiations continued, but they'd shifted now. More collaborative, less transactional. The Molthari wanted cultural exchange programs, sending their young to learn from other species, hosting students from other worlds. Aldous agreed immediately, already thinking about which universities would jump at the opportunity. They discussed mutual defense, but not from a place of distrust. The Molthari were straightforward about their military capabilities and limitations. Aldous matched their honesty. They found common ground in border patrol agreements, shared intelligence on pirate activity in the fringe territories. Hours passed. The stars wheeled slowly outside the viewport. Somewhere in the middle of discussing mining rights, Shiva fell completely asleep, curled against the base of Diana's platform like an oversized, extremely dangerous house cat. Diana noticed, but didn't move. Didn't wake her. Just kept her voice low and let the cubs sleep. Olan and Wynne were still awake, but fading. Olan's eyes kept drooping closed, then snapping open like he was fighting sleep through sheer willpower. Wynne had given up and was just lying down, still listening, but clearly exhausted. "Perhaps," Ambassador Hesse Allen said, noticing his young charge's condition, "we should conclude for the evening. The cubs have had much stimulation today." "Of course," Aldous said. "We have quarters prepared for your delegation. Adjustable temperature, lighting, privacy locks on the doors." "That would be acceptable." Hessalan stood, stretching with a fluidity that reminded everyone present that underneath the diplomacy, he was still very much a predator. "However, there is one matter we must discuss before we part." Something in his tone made the room go quiet. Not tense, exactly, but focused. "We have been attempting these negotiations for 2 standard cycles," Hess Allen continued. 6 species, 6 failures. Each time, we brought the young ones as a show of trust. Each time, that trust was misunderstood or ignored. We began to believe that perhaps joining the Galactic Council was a mistake, that we would never find species who understood us. He looked directly at Diana. "Then we met your delegation, Captain Aldous. More specifically, we met Diana, who understood in minutes what others could not grasp in months." Diana felt her face heating up. "I just did my job, Ambassador." "You did more than that. You saw my people, saw the cubs, as people. Not as problems to manage or obstacles to navigate. People." His ears angled forward, fully open. "The cubs have accepted you. Do you understand what this means in our culture?" "It means I passed a test I didn't know I was taking," Diana offered. "It means the young trust you. When the young trust, the clan trusts. When the clan trusts, we bond." He paused, then said something in the Multhari language, a series of clicks and low rumbles that the universal translator struggled with before settling on. "We name you clan friend, honorary member. This is not given lightly." Deanna actually didn't have words for a moment. "I'm honored, Ambassador. Truly." "There is more," Hassalan said. "We would request that you be assigned as permanent liaison to our worlds. We need someone who understands, someone who the Cubs trust, someone who will help bridge the gap between our people and yours." Aldous straightened. "Ambassador, Diana is a valued member of my crew." "I understand, Captain, but consider, your crew member could be the foundation of lasting peace between our species. Would you deny that opportunity?" Aldous looked at Diana. For the first time, he didn't see the casual, coffee-drinking woman who bent regulations. He saw someone who'd done what his entire military career hadn't prepared him for. Someone who'd built bridges while he'd been trying to construct formal treaties. That, he said slowly, would be Diana's choice to make. Every eye in the room turned to her. Shiva was still sleeping, but Olin and Wynne were wide awake now, watching with intense focus. "Can I think about it?" Diana asked. "This is big. Life-changing big." "Of course," Hassalan said. "We would not ask you to decide in haste. But know this, you would be welcomed. The Cubs have already begun calling you Soft Speaker Who Understands. That is a title of great affection among our people." Olin raised his head. "You should come. You could teach us more about persistence, hunting, and barbecue." Wynne nodded seriously. "And you could meet our siblings. They would like you." Shiva, apparently not as asleep as she'd seemed, cracked one eye open. "Stay," she mumbled. "Is better when you are here." Deanna felt something warm bloom in her chest. She'd spent so much of her career being underestimated, dismissed, treated like a placeholder. And now, here was an entire species asking her to stay, wanting her specifically, trusting her with their young. "I'll think about it," she said again, but there was a smile in her voice. "I promise." The negotiations concluded. Treaties were drafted, to be finalized in the morning after everyone had rested. The Multhari delegation was escorted to their quarters. The Cubs went reluctantly, looking back at Diana multiple times before finally disappearing down the corridor. And Aldous stood in the now empty observation lounge, looking at the human who'd just reshaped his entire understanding of diplomacy. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "You already apologized, Captain." "No, I mean a real one." He met her eyes. "I thought you were careless, undisciplined, not serious about your role. I was wrong. You're the most competent member of this crew, and I failed to see it because I was looking for competence that looked like mine." Deanna was quiet for a moment. Then, "Want to know a secret, Captain?" "What?" "I let you think that. The casual thing, the coffee, the jokes. It makes people underestimate me. And when people underestimate you, they don't see you working. They don't notice when you're reading their body language, learning their patterns, figuring out what makes them tick." She smiled. "Humans learned a long time ago. Sometimes the best way to hunt is to not look like a hunter." Aldous stared at her. Then, slowly, he started to laugh. Not his usual bark of amusement, but genuine, warm laughter. "We have no idea what we've unleashed on the galaxy, do we?" he said. "Not even a little bit," Diana agreed. And somewhere in the crew quarters, 3 Multhari Cubs were already planning all the things they'd show the soft speaker who understood once she agreed to stay, which, honestly, they were pretty sure she would. 3 days later, the treaties were finalized, signed and sealed with all the formal pomp that the Molthari had initially skipped, but now seemed willing to tolerate. Aldous managed to deliver his ceremonial speech at a reasonable volume, only slipping into his natural boom once, and immediately correcting when he saw the cub's ears flatten. Progress. The Molthari vessel sat docked alongside the SS Wanderlust, sleek and dark, built for speed and stealth in a way that reflected their culture perfectly. In 6 hours, it would depart for the Molthari home system, carrying not just a treaty, but the beginning of something larger. Deanna stood in her quarters, looking at the half-packed bags on her bunk. She'd made her decision somewhere around the second day, during a conversation with Wynne about Earth's oceans. He'd been fascinated by the concept of whales, massive creatures that sang to each other across thousands of miles of water. The look in his eyes, that pure curiosity and wonder, had sealed it. These cubs, this species, they were at a turning point. First contact had been rough. Integration into the Galactic Council, rougher still. They needed someone who understood them, who could help translate not just their words, but their intentions, their culture, their way of seeing the universe. They needed a bridge. And Diana had spent her entire career building bridges, even when nobody noticed. A chime at her door. "Come in." Aldous entered, ducking slightly out of habit, even though the doorway was built for Valtorian height. He looked at the bags, at her nearly empty shelves, and nodded slowly. "You're going?" "Yeah," Diana said. "I am. I expected as much." He clasped his hands behind his back, parade rest position. Old habits. "I came to tell you that I've forwarded a commendation to Fleet Command. Full disclosure of what happened during the negotiations, with my recommendation for promotion and recognition." Diana blinked. "Captain, you don't have to." "I do, actually. Because what you did wasn't just good diplomacy. It was exceptional. And more than that, it showed me something I'd been too rigid to see." He met her eyes. "Military precision has its place, but understanding, adaptation, genuine connection, those things matter more than I'd given them credit for. You taught me that." "I think you would have figured it out eventually," Diana said gently. "Maybe, but probably not before causing several more diplomatic incidents." His mouth twitched in what might have been self-deprecating humor. "The Delphian started a betting pool on how long before I got us into an interstellar war. The over-under was 18 months. Diana couldn't help it. She laughed. "Please tell me you're joking." "I wish I was." He shook his head. "The point is, you made me better at my job. You made this crew better. And now you're going to do the same thing for an entire species. I'm proud to have served with you, Liaison Diana." He extended his hand, palm up, the Valtorian gesture of respect between equals. She took it, gripping firmly. "It's been an honor, Captain." "The honor was mine." After he left, Diana finished packing. Not much to take, really. Some clothes, personal items, her battered copy of the complete works of Terry Pratchett. Because, if she was going to spend time teaching young Molthari about humanity, they needed to understand human humor, and Pratchett was as good a starting point as any. Her datapad chimed, a message from her sister back on Earth. "Mom says you're moving to an alien planet to babysit space cats. Please tell me she misunderstood. Call me." Diana smiled and typed back. "Mom understood perfectly. They're not space cats, though. More like space panthers. Very polite space panthers who appreciate barbecue. I'll call soon. Love you." Another chime. This one from the Molthari vessel. Ambassador Hesse Allen. The cubs are asking when you're coming aboard. Olin has already claimed the quarters next to yours so he can protect you from dangers. Shiva wants to show you her collection of river stones from home. Win is pretending he doesn't care, but keeps asking if you've boarded yet. No pressure, but they're driving the entire delegation to distraction. Deanna laughed out loud. Yeah, she'd made the right choice. She grabbed her bags and headed for the airlock. The Multhari delegation was waiting. Adults trying to maintain dignified composure. Cubs absolutely failing to contain their excitement. The moment Diana stepped through the airlock, Shiva launched herself forward, stopping just short of actually tackling her. You came! You're really coming! I said I would, Deanna replied, setting down her bags so she could give the cub her full attention. I keep my promises. Olan tried to play it cool, crossing his arms and nodding like this was exactly what he'd expected. The effect was somewhat ruined by his tail, which was swishing so fast it was basically a blur. Good. The home world will be interesting for you. Many things to see. Dangerous things. But we will keep you safe. I appreciate that, Diana said seriously, because she understood that this was a big deal for him. The chance to be a protector, to show his worth. Wynne approached more slowly, but his ears were fully forward, alert and happy. I told my siblings about you. They did not believe me when I said a human understood clan trust. They will believe now. I look forward to meeting them, Diana said. Ambassador Hessa Allen stepped forward, placing a paw on her shoulder, a gesture of welcome, of inclusion. You honor us with your presence, Diana of Earth. Welcome to Clan Hessalan. From this day forward, you walk under our protection, and we under yours. It was formal, ritualistic, and it made Diana's throat tight with emotion. I'll do my best to be worthy of that trust, Ambassador. You already are. He gestured toward the interior of the ship. Come, let me show you your new home. As they walked through the corridors, cubs bouncing around her like enthusiastic escorts, Diana thought about the path that had led her here. All the times she'd been dismissed, overlooked, treated like she didn't matter. All the times she'd smiled and let them think what they wanted while she quietly did the work nobody else wanted to do. Humans had persistence hunted their way across Earth, outlasting faster and stronger predators through sheer refusal to quit. Then they'd done it again, making friends with wolves and turning them into dogs, domesticating cats that had no business being domesticated, convincing horses to let them ride. And now they were doing it on a galactic scale. Not through conquest or force, but through that same stubborn determination to connect, to understand, to find common ground, even when it seemed impossible. The Multhari thought they were getting a cultural liaison. What they were actually getting was the full force of human persistence, wrapped in a friendly package, armed with barbecue, recipes, and an encyclopedic knowledge of alien customs. The galaxy had no idea what it was in for. Diana, Shiva said, tugging on her sleeve, when we get home, can you make the rib things again? With the sauce? Absolutely, Diana promised. I'll teach you how to make them yourself. Really? All three cubs perked up. Really? Cooking is better when you share it. That's kind of the whole point. Olan's chest puffed up. I will become the best rib maker in the clan. Everyone will ask how I learned, and I will say, the human taught me. We will all learn, Wynne corrected, and we will make them together. Even better, Diana said. Behind them, watching this exchange with quiet satisfaction, Ambassador Hessalan sent a message to the Multhari High Council. First contact protocols should be revised. Traditional strength displays are ineffective. Recommend alternative approach. Send humans with food and cultural databases. Results are remarkable. The response came quickly. Explain. Hassalan glanced at Diana, who was now trying to explain the concept of coleslaw to three deeply confused but enthusiastic cubs, and typed, "It is better experienced than explained. Trust me on this. The humans have mastered something we have not. They turn strangers into family, and they make it look easy. We have much to learn from them." He paused, then added, "Also, they have this food called barbecue. You need to try it. Immediately." The ship disengaged from the SS Wanderlust and turned toward home, carrying treaties, hope, and one human who'd figured out that the best way to reach the stars wasn't to conquer them. It was to make friends and bring snacks. Humanity, indeed.